Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment of our program brought to you by Fast Frame. I needed to get something framed for my mother this week, for Mother's Day, of course. Where did I go? I went to Fast Frame. They do fantastic stuff. Now, I didn't splurge and get my mother a painting. I probably should have. But you can see what they can do with different types of painting. They're great with the mats like they've got on the left. You get double, triple mats. They do that. And then on the right, if you've just taken a beautiful canvas painting, simple. They find something that matches it perfectly. They do great work. They're in the Common Shopping Center on North Peters Road. Nobody better than Fast Frame, folks. All right, guys, let's take a look at our big board where Chuck Cavaleris is playing Vanna White. Vanna's getting older, but she still looks better than Chuck. All right. This from me. All right. Right over there, what you see are the 16 the last 16 first-time ever head coaches hired into the SEC. Hard to say that correctly. Anybody that was hired and they've never been a coach before in the SEC since 2000 is on the board. All right, so 16 of them. What we've got there listed, we can go back over there now. What we've got listed is each person, they're alphabetical by school, so Alabama, Florida, Georgia. Up at the top, we'll just run through Mike Shula, all right? What you see, 2003 to 2006, so he was there 4 seasons. They were 10-3 the year before he got there. Now, there's an asterisk there because that's a good record, but he took over because they were in NCAA trouble. That was the whole Mike DuBose thing, so that's when Shula went over. They were 10-3 before he got there. They went 26-23 under Shula, and he was fired. So basically, you have everyone listed by their year, their school, their year, the record before they got there, their record at the school, and then what happened to them. And what you see is there are only 4 guys on that list that lasted 50 games or 4+ years at their school.
Wow.
Now, a couple of guys left early, like James Franklin, but Mark Richt, Mark Stoops has been there at Kentucky. They gave him that huge contract after his first couple of good years, and now they're stuck with him. Dan Mullen, great run. Sylvester Croom made it 5 years.
Right.
So Mississippi State had 2 of those guys. You look down there are 7 guys out of those 16 who had winning records. So that would be Mike Shula, Will Muschamp, Ron Zook, Kirby Smart, who's early in his gig, Mark Richt, Dan Mullen, and James Franklin all had winning records. But the bottom line is Shula, Muschamp, Zook, fired. Richt, fired, but after a heck of a run. Joker Phillips, fired. Sylvester Croom, fired. Ed Orgeron at Ole Miss was horrific, fired. And Robbie Caldwell, fired. A couple of guys left. That would be Franklin, left Vanderbilt. Mullen left Mississippi State this year. Guy Morris left Kentucky after 2 years to go to Baylor. So the guys who were hired and still employed, there's about 5 or 6 of them. I'll tell you something right now if you guys come back over here. The average a guy inherited, the average that was about a 5-7 record. That's what the average was before you took over. The average coach in that list lasts about 4 years. They go about 28-23. First-time coaches in the SEC in the last 20 years, 28-23. And you take Richt out of the equation, and the average record goes to 20-21. So Richt skews it with those 145 victories. All right. You've seen the list. Does it change any of your thoughts about Jeremy Pruitt? Does anything there surprise you? Does anything there worry you?
It doesn't to me. To me, what stands out is the types of schools that you see on there multiple times, the schools that had to go back to the well. You've never seen Tennessee on this list. You hadn't seen some other schools on this list. I think the fact that some of these schools keep having to try it all over again, I think it's all about the program you take over. And I think Jeremy Pruitt takes over a program that needs a lot of work. If he stepped into a situation like Kirby Smart and Mark Richt at Georgia, he might have an even better chance of success. I think it's all about the situation you step into in a lot of cases, and he's got a lot of work to do, and it's like a lot of the coaches on this list. So it's all going to be about how he handles the situation. But it's not hard to envision him being on this same list because some of these situations were as messy as what he's taking over.
Yeah.
Go back a little far. It doesn't make me feel any worse about Pruitt, and here's why. If you go back a little farther on that list, let's take 4 Tennessee head coaches: Butch Jones and Dooley. I've already forgotten his name. They were head coaches. They were hired as head coaches. But if you go back, Philip Fulmer, Doug Dickey, they were assistants who got their first job at Tennessee. So, which 2 of those 4 would you rather have?
But the reason I didn't go back 40 years was because you're now a 14-team league. You got an SEC championship game. The playing
landscape has changed.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit. It's tougher now than it was then. But I could have gone back, and you can also do a list that if you put most coaches up there, just period, that were hired, they're going to be fired.
They're going to be fired. Yeah.
But I don't know. I look at it. I didn't expect it to be that bad. It worried me a little. I didn't expect it to be that bad.
Here's what worries me: just the percentage. Out of the 16, only 4, in my opinion, you would say were successful. That's not a good percentage. Now. So what you're doing is now I understand it's a crapshoot whenever you hire somebody, even if they've been a head coach somewhere. It's even a greater crapshoot when you hire somebody that's never been a head coach before. Yeah. So when only 4 out of 16 have succeeded, that does give me a little bit more concern about whether he'll be successful. Yes. I understand all the differences in the personalities and the programs, but that is not a very good percentage.
You can make an argument that there are 2 that are proven over time that lasted. I know that you include, Mark Richt and Dan Mullen.
Right.
Yes.
Now, Kirby Smart off to a hot start, and with the recruiting, it looks like he's going to be there a long time and do a good job. But it's early. Guys have blown up before. So then you look at James Franklin. He did a good job, and then he got out of there. So would he have continued to do a good job at Vanderbilt?
But he did a good job at Penn State.
That's true. I think he's a good coach. Yeah. But does Vanderbilt look at that and say it was great because when he left and took their players, they were all mad at him, cussing him on social media? So, I mean, if you're looking at first-time coaches, I think Smart, I'll give you Smart because that looks great. Looks like it's going to be great. Richt, clearly, you get 15 years out of a guy and 145 wins, a couple of SEC titles. That's a good run. Mullen, what he did at Mississippi State, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment, is unbelievable. But that's a pretty short list out of 16 people.
What it tells me is the odds are very much against a first-time head coach in the SEC making it.
Doesn't mean it's possible.
Yes, and I think the key is at least being familiar with the landscape, being familiar with recruiting, knowing the schools. To me, it would be really, really tough if you brought somebody in totally from the outside and expect them to win in this situation.
To undermine my own argument, maybe you take Will Muschamp. He's doing pretty good at his second job in the SEC, but he didn't do very good at his first. So maybe Jeremy Pruitt will do good at Georgia in a few years.
Well, and the thing is, that's right. So you got to wonder too if Will Muschamp had been given more time at Florida, because he's technically. I think his record is about 4th or 5th best on this list. He was 28-21. He had an 11-win season down there. He got undone by that 4-win season and the fact they didn't like his offense. Yeah. Sounds familiar. You've also got the expectations. If Muschamp had done that at Mississippi State, he would have been there. Yeah. Where if Pruitt did that at Arkansas, he'd probably get a longer leash than what he'll get at Tennessee. To me, I didn't expect it to be that bleak of an outlook when you go through the coaches up there. Anyway,
give credit to Georgia. Their last 2 hires, first-time head coaches, and they both, so far at least, have worked out.
Well, and Jim Donnan worked out, and he was a first-time coach in terms of moving up from, at that point, Marshall was division, they were FCS at the time. 1AA is what you called it back then. But, all right. When we come back, we're going to talk about the best teams and programs of the college football playoff era. A group went back, tallied all of the rankings. Every single week there have been rankings during the 4-year football playoff era. And we're going to look at who the best coaches, best teams were. Interesting stories stand out. Dan Mullen going to get mentioned again. Come on back.